Hello, Internet, and welcome to another episode of Geek News, Reviews, and Opinions. I am your host, Stephen Romney, filling in for Adam Mickelson, who is currently dealing with one of the many perils of winter, the common cold. And so that is why it is on this channel this time, and not on the usual Geek News / Drac 2326 channel. So, yeah, we'll just kind of have to roll with it as it comes. And I am also clearly not by myself. I am also being joined by Alex Short, aka the Shadow Blazer 3000. How are you doing tonight, Alex?
Oh, I'm doing pretty well. It's been a crazy few days. Just had some, family issues going on with relatives and all that, but time of the year, right? And of course, been busy working for my 12 Days of Anime project, which I'm happy to say all the videos are done. They're ready to go. They're all scheduled. So saying it right now, starting the 14th, they'll all be going live starting 6 a.m. Mountain Time. There'll be one a day from the 14th through the 25th.
Well, that's definitely very good to hear when, in the midst of everything, at least something seems to be falling into place.
Yes.
Just means I need to get my butt in gear and actually get my stuff ready to go. But while people could listen to people talking about the perils of working on YouTube, that's not what people are here for. They are here to hear some geeky news, some geeky reviews, and hopefully some opinions if there's time. And for tonight's top story, we're going to be talking about, well, basically this is what I would call the first half of the Nintendo talk for this episode, as we are going to be discussing a certain little console that got a nice big TV debut courtesy of one Jimmy Fallon. And that's right, we are talking about both the reveal of the Nintendo Switch and the reveal of Super Mario Run, both of which were revealed most recently on The Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon, courtesy of both Reggie Fils-Aimé and Shigeru Miyamoto. Now, the big difference here is that we're now actually seeing the Switch in action. So I guess the best question to ask would be, now that we're actually seeing how the Switch works on a non-edited PR video, has anybody's opinions changed, or anybody have any additional speculation of how the system actually works?
Well, I'd say it's shown me a lot more, thankfully. It was hard to say. I didn't have a strong opinion beyond the simple buyer's remorse of having bought a Wii U not too long ago. But it is nice to kind of see it more in its raw form, in its raw state, because there's only so much you can really gather out of simple advertising spin and marketing. So I liked being able to see what I saw. It definitely looks pretty nice, looks impressive.
Yeah, and at the very least, it was also nice that they actually showed and did a live demonstration of switching it from the monitor hookup to its portable mode, because that was something that people were already speculating on how quick that process would be, and, well, it definitely looked relatively quick from when Reggie pulled it out of the dock and then handed it over to Jimmy to have him play a little bit of Breath of the Wild.
Yeah, and it looked good. I was amazed that it could even run. I think they were running Dark Souls even on it, weren't they?
I'm not entirely sure, at least not from what I've seen on the Jimmy Fallon reveal, because keep in mind, whatever games we saw in the initial reveal trailer Nintendo put out were games edited on after the fact. So seeing an actual live demo, that definitely is a major step up, because now we're actually saying, okay, it's an actual object and it actually does some of what it advertises. As for, I mean, who knows? Maybe they do have a deal in the works with From Software to get something like Dark Souls on the console. I mean, granted, they've already stoked the flames by showing something like Skyrim in the initial pitch trailer. And I think that was really the big thing, was actually seeing seeing it actually being held by someone who wasn't a Nintendo executive. Although Jimmy Fallon constantly geeking out did get a little annoying, but then again, that's Jimmy Fallon being Jimmy Fallon.
Yeah, that is Jimmy Fallon.
Yeah, but at the very least, it seemed genuine. At least like it was a genuine excitement as opposed to the fake kind of excitement talk show hosts have done in the past.
That's true.
Yeah, and especially when it came to showing certain mechanics of Breath of the Wild, using the boulder to destroy the bokoblins, as well as using the shield slide and stuff like that, it at least shows like, okay, they have something, and it's getting to a point where, okay, we feel comfortable showing this to the public. Yeah.
Yeah. I it looked good, looked intriguing. I'm hoping we get to see more demos as the months start rolling out, as we get a little closer to launch. Maybe, hopefully, some. I don't know if there's any major tech shows in between now and between its launch, or just any kind of minor tech shows going on soon enough that we might get a little more Switch coverage soon enough.
Yeah, and most that I know is that Nintendo is planning an event on January 12th. So right at the start of the new year is when they're going to have a Nintendo Direct going into more detail about what the Switch can and can't do, as well as what we can expect from the opening lineup. Now, as for like my opinions about the Switch, not all of my opinions have changed in regards to, say, what games are available, because again, the only game that we've seen that we know for a fact is coming to the system is Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. And, well, that's one game that we know looks good, but that's because it was in-house. We still don't know what other games Nintendo has in the pipeline or what third parties are getting ready to churn out.
Well, we do know the next Sonic game is still coming to Switch.
Yes.
The one we will still call for the time being Sonic Generations 2.
Yeah, given that you see both modern and classic Sonic, I don't see what else they could call it unless they decide to somehow do a weird, I don't know. It could go.
I'm sure they'll find something.
Yeah, I'm sure they'll find some sort of gimmick to give it a different name. I mean, who knows? I mean, the title off the top of my head would be something like Sonic Dimensions or something. But then again, they probably don't want to get confused with the Spider-Man game of a similar name.
Yeah.
Yeah. And as for the other reveal of Super Mario Run, now this was my first time seeing someone actually playing Super Mario Run, and they actually had an actual smartphone hooked up, and from the looks of it, it looked a lot like those Temple Run games that have basically filled the Google Play Store ad nauseum, except on a 2D plane instead of on a 3D plane.
Yeah, that's the vibe I got it from too, and I mean, even Sonic had a very similar kind of Temple Run styled game to it. As I don't even think that's around anymore. I think they removed it from the app, from whatever app store it was on.
Yeah, I think it actually is still around because they did do like a Sonic Boom like release related to it. But at the very least, I can understand where Nintendo's coming from. They made a very simple game that can be played with one hand, since most phone games usually are designed for that. And well, with what we've got, it does the job. It's Mario on a smartphone that can be played with one hand. I mean, it definitely looks like that it has some challenge to it, though, especially considering that you can't really go backwards. It seems to be like Sonic and the Secret Rings, where Mario is running in a straight line and you have to time the jumps right.
Oh, so you're thinking it's probably on rails.
That's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking the challenge of it is not so much that you're having to guide Mario like left to right. I think it's more that Mario is moving and you just have to make sure to time the jumps right to get over the obstacles. At least that's what it looked like when Jimmy Fallon was playing it, especially when he kept kind of getting stuck in that jump cycle where he was going off the wall and going backward and then running back forward without really doing anything else except from trying to jump. I mean, the only other way I could see if they were wanted to keep it one hand is maybe use some sort of gyro sensor in the smartphone, but that would kind of limit how many phones they could put the game on. But hasn't stopped companies before, but
yeah.
And especially at the very least, if you're designing for one hand, I think that maybe just the route they're going, it's like, okay, well, let's make the act of timing your jumps right the challenge in and of itself, as opposed to trying to balance everything else. Yeah. So based on what you saw, what did you kind of think about the Super Mario Run, like from what you were able to see?
It looks nice. It's the Nintendo polish, Nintendo quality. I'm just not big into mobile games, so it doesn't have that much interest for me personally. But I guess it's interesting to see Mario expand into the mobile platform. We've known Nintendo's been trying to gradually find their way into the mobile market over the last several years.
Yeah, and especially and I kind of see where you're coming from in lack of interest, especially given that Super Mario Run is going to be exclusive to the Apple Store, which is something a lot of people still don't quite realize, is that it's not coming to Android. It's exclusively with Apple, probably for a variety of reasons, but that seems to be the direction Nintendo's also going, is trying to forge those strong alliances. And speaking of forged alliances and potential backstabbing, that leads us into our next story, which is a bit of a downer, but also highlights kind of the scary part of owning a games company. And it was announced recently that Vivendi, and some of you may recognize that name, but the company Vivendi is purchasing more and more shares of our friends to, well, technically both the north and to the east, since they're both based in Montreal and in parts of France. Point being, you have Vivendi buying up major shares of Ubisoft, raising concerns that it may try to stage a hostile takeover. Now, this is a bit more complicated, because what we've got here is that you've got Ubisoft, which is based in France, and Vivendi's been going up and buying a bunch of shares, trying to get more buying power within the company. And it was announced that on December 7th, Vivendi upped its stake to 25.15% and 22.92% of its voting rights, when they previously had a 23% stake. Now, under French law, it means that if they break past that 30%, they have to make an official bid to take over the company, which is something that Ubisoft does not want. Especially considering previous dealings with Vivendi and having lost with the CEO, Yves Guillemot. I apologize if I mispronounce it. I am not familiar with French, but Vivendi already bought out Gameloft, and so naturally Ubisoft is getting a little bit worried.
Yeah, I can imagine. You have a big, giant company looking to snatch you up, and I don't. Oh my goodness! Yeah, I'm reading more of the article myself here. So, yeah, they're getting really close here. And do you think they're really gonna go for the full takeover, or do you think they're just gonna kind of like stop shy of it just so they don't have to?
Well, from the looks of it, it looks like they're either going to stop shy and try to wheedle in more people from Vivendi into the board of directors, or they'll try for the hostile takeover, or they'll basically corral Ubisoft into making the decision of we can either take you over, or you can basically do what we say while still maintaining the illusion of your own sovereignty, but still answering to us, which is what would happen by them sneaking in members of the people from their company onto Ubisoft's board of directors.
Yeah, I could probably see that happening. If they don't want to make the giant investment of taking over a whole new company, they'll just sort of puppet it without having to actually buy it, by pretty much taking over their board of directors and taking over most of their shares.
Yep. And as to what that means to the players, well, nobody at Ubisoft really knows just yet, since they don't know what Vivendi is actually planning. And Vivendi themselves have issued a declaration stating that they are not considering the launch they're not officially considering doing a public buyout of Ubisoft. They're basically just, and I like this quote because it says that it's like Vivendi is hoping to build a fruitful cooperation with Ubisoft. I feel like the next part of that phrase should be at the end of a loaded gun.
Yeah, because what else are you gonna do if you're just gonna sort of hostily take them over, or buy off most of their stock? Clearly, you have some sort of agenda of your own. Vivendi must have something that they want, particularly out of Ubisoft, if they're asking to scoop them up. I don't think it's just purely for the brand recognition.
I think part of it may even be that maybe the people of Vivendi have some sort of beef with the Guillemot family, because they bought out another company from them by the name of Gameloft, which to my memory is I might be confusing with Gamefly, but I remember it was a similar service to something like Gamefly or Netflix, where you basically could rent games at a price. I may be getting that completely wrong.
I think you are.
Yeah, I think I might be.
I just looked it up on Wikipedia. It's just a French video game developer.
Okay, so yeah, maybe it is that they maybe just have some beef with the family that the CEO is a part of, and that's thus why they're trying to stage this takeover. As for whether or not it'll affect any of the development of their games, Ubisoft, it basically is saying that they're still going to try to make games and still try to take risks wherever they can. It's just that they're starting to tug at their shirt collars a little bit as more and more shares keep getting bought out. I mean, they're already partway there at over 25%. And I don't know how the stock market works in France or the EU, but it's definitely some cause for concern.
I can imagine, because more often than not, when bigger companies buy out other big companies, well, somebody gets squeezed through the middle.
Mm-hmm.
And that's usually lower level employees.
Yep. I mean, I'm surprised Ubisoft hasn't tried initiating a smokescreen where every time Vivendi tries to buy a share, they have to sign into Uplay. Maybe that doesn't stop them, though. That's probably the thing, is that maybe that hasn't stopped them.
I guess so.
That's why they're freaking out. But yes, that's the perils of the games industry, unfortunately, is, well, companies do try to basically wage wars and coups through dollars. And with that, well, it's time to talk about the story that I'm sure a lot of listeners of this podcast are wanting us to talk about, since this was getting some discussion this week. And that is a story regarding one Felix Kjellberg, a.k.a. PewDiePie. No, I'm not going to do the high-pitched thing because my throat has gone through enough hell this week. All right, to kind of run people down through the events, this all started when at the start of the week, PewDiePie posted a video complaining about recent changes to YouTube's interface that has been having an adverse effect on his channel. And then he ended said video by saying that he was going to delete his channel once he reached 50 million subs, which is the highest amount of subscribers that any YouTube channel has been able to amass at this point. But, as I'm sure a lot of you were probably expecting, if you weren't, please stand on your head. But as many people called out, this turned out to be yet a major ploy to push up to that 50 subscribers. Because PewDiePie did technically delete a channel, but
just not his channel.
Just not the main channel that he does most of his work on. And it's just kind of funny, kind of some of the reasoning given for this is that he deleted the channel that was called Jacksepticeye 2, which only had 2 videos, but the reason he gave for doing the quote-unquote trolling that he did was to show how much of an influence he had on the media at large. Because much as a lot of people hate to admit it, he is the most subscribed and most watched YouTuber on the website.
Yep, that's true. He did it because, well, frankly, he could.
Yep. And I mean, say for the sake of argument that PewDiePie made that sort of announcement, I don't know if YouTube is a publicly traded company yet, but that kind of speculation could cause, well, it could cause shares in a company to go up and down, and so maybe that's what he was hoping to accomplish. But I think, at least, I don't know if anybody else kind of could call his bluff, but it did get talked about on a lot of news sites, so in a sense, he was proven right.
Yeah, I pretty much knew he wasn't going to do it. I didn't believe it for a second.
Yeah, I don't think anybody did because, well, given that YouTube is his job, that would also, well, quite literally would be career suicide to delete the main channel, because then you're literally having to start from scratch, which means you don't have any money coming in. And that's, well...
Yeah, you'd have to hope he had some wise investing on the side to keep him afloat if he were to truly do that.
Yeah, and especially looking at at least there's some good to come out of this, because he was talking about some of the actual legitimate problems YouTube has been having lately in terms of how content is promoted on the site and how there's barely any subscriptions feed anymore. I mean, it technically is there if you can look for it, but you have the problem of subscribers, of channels that are subscribed to disappearing from people's subscriber lists, and you basically have it where you get forced to see recommended videos on your homepage instead of the stuff you actually want to watch. And those are very legitimate concerns.
Yeah. So at least for that, he's brought up some of the problems with YouTube, along with a lot of other content creators. But yeah, I mean, really, I don't think anybody, if you really believed he was going to delete it, and if you're upset that he didn't go through with it, well, I don't know what to tell you. Because you really can't believe that one of the most subscribed to and highly paid YouTubers out there is suddenly going to just throw it all away for no good reason.
Yeah, I mean, especially when you have people trying to decide to whether to jump ship to another video platform or not, it's definitely a tricky thing, especially when you consider, and I don't know the exact figures, but you never see any ads for any of the YouTube Red stuff anymore, because a lot of the exclusive content at least from what I've been seeing, hasn't really sold a lot of people on the idea of paying for YouTube Red. But I know people have paid for it more to get rid of the ads and not to watch exclusive shows.
Pretty much. I mean, there's really not much there on the Red platform already. There's nothing really exclusive. There's certainly nothing that makes me want to pay for it.
Yeah, and I mean, especially like between stuff from Rooster Teeth and the various copies of other cable shows by both PewDiePie and MatPat, there's not much there that really warrants actually like hunting those things down that you can't already get at a much higher quality from other sources. But as for the direction of YouTube, well, it was an interesting way to show that, yeah, PewDiePie could very well make waves in the media, but honestly, I don't know. I can't really say whether or not YouTube's actually going to really listen to any of the various concerns, although PewDiePie has stated that he has met with the people at YouTube, and they are currently looking into it. So take that for what it's worth, which, given recent history, is probably not much.
Unfortunately, I mean, YouTube says one thing, but they've always shown to do another.
Mm-hmm. Time and time again. Sometimes, and it's not even always out of malice, it's just out of general ineptitude, as well as the disconnect that a lot of the people who maintain the site don't really know what it's like to work on stuff as a YouTuber, of having to actually navigate said site. Now, whether or not things will improve, because I know the CEO at the very least has been trying to improve relations with a lot of the content creators, especially people like PewDiePie, because of how much money they bring to the company, even though it's still at a loss to Google. But that is a whole separate can of worms. So, yeah, good on you, Felix. You proved that, yeah, you can make the news pretty quickly and control people, but, well, don't make it a habit, because we all know the story of the boy who cried wolf.
Yep.
Yeah, because I mean, how many times have we had people saying, "Oh, I'm going to delete my videos, delete my channel," and all that, but then they never actually do it? I mean,
it's so common at this point. Everybody does it.
And if it's not like threatening to delete their channel, it's trying to drum up controversy in various other places. I mean, people could insert their own joke about various YouTubers who've tried to thrive off controversy. I'm not going to name them by name because I'm not going to give them that kind of promotion. The kind of promotion that a obscure podcast on YouTube can give.
Pretty much.
All right. Well, there's not much else we can really say about that. It's just, hey, YouTubers trolled the world. And in other news, water is wet.
Yep. Water is indeed wet. Sky is blue, and winter is here in the northern hemisphere.
Yep.
But if you're in the southern hemisphere, it's summer.
Yep. Speaking of blue, this brings us to the next story that's in slightly lighter news, but also acts as a nice lead-in to our entertainment block. And that is, and honestly, when I first saw this story, I definitely had to raise an eyebrow, but that is the announcement that Sega is developing TV and film properties based on some of their games. Games that are listed specifically include titles such as Altered Beast and Streets of Rage. Now, the company that they've partnered with is a company called Circle of Confusion, which is known for shows like Fear the Walking Dead and Powers, which is viewable on PlayStation Now. And so, looking at this, I can see why they're doing it, but it's just the games they're choosing. I mean, that's kind of what baffles me the most, because, I mean, Altered Beast, you could get some mileage out of, unless you base it on the crappy PS2 game, where you could actually, it would just basically be like Clash of the Titans, except instead of having Perseus, you just have someone who can transform into different animals. Streets of Rage, though, well, after having seen Streets of Fire by Walter Hill, I get the feeling you'd end up with either a TV show or a movie that would either be Streets of Fire without the music or just a knockoff of the Warriors. Because, let's face it, Streets of Rage was inspired very heavily by Streets of Fire. And honestly, I mean, if they can do it, more power to them, but of the games to choose, those would definitely not be the first choice that one would adapt. And granted, there are other games they're looking to adapt, some that may send an icy shiver down the spines of many a gamer. House of the Dead.
Hey, if they could do a better House of the Dead than Uwe Ball, I'm all for it.
Yeah, because I mean, some of the titles, I mean, there are some Sega games that I can actually see a movie. I mean, Golden Axe, I mean, just look at Conan. You could probably get some mileage out of Golden Axe. And stuff like Virtua Fighter, though, the well's kind of been poisoned when it comes to fighting games, but, well, they've done weirder things with the franchise. Like,
well, we are getting a new Mortal Kombat at some point, so if that really takes off, then I think Virtua Fighter can work too, if that new Mortal Kombat does come out any good.
Yeah, I mean, at the very least, Warner Brothers is actually trying to put effort, and maybe that's what is giving Sega a little bit more confidence. Now, granted, I haven't seen Powers or Fear the Walking Dead, but who knows? Maybe the work that the studio Circle of Confusion has done is probably filling Sega with a little bit more confidence, especially since in recent history, they're basically trying to shift more as a media company rather than as solely video games, as seen with stuff like Sonic Boom and the line of comics that have been published for, I think, a good 20 or 30 years or so. I mean,
yeah, I mean, if Sega can really absolutely start making it better in the media industry, hell, I'd like them to make a better anime for one. Yeah, I didn't like their attempt at making Phantasy Star Online 2 into an animation. That was pretty bad. But if they could start, they can make some decent, team up with some decent producers, make some decent movies or TV projects, animated, American, Japanese, otherwise, wherever they may come out of, then I'm curious to see, because certainly Sega has some games that can lend themselves plenty well to movies just as much as Nintendo can.
Yeah, and I guess the big difference is that at least Sega is actually willing to take the risk more than Nintendo. Granted, Nintendo has been burned by the US time and time again, so I can see their reluctance. And again, there is a strong track record, as seen with the various adaptations of Sonic we have seen. Granted, that's the subject of debate in regards to things like Sonic X and the OVA, but it at least shows that they're not as afraid of the medium of television and film as other companies.
You just need the right people in control of the producer's chair and find the right kind of filmmakers. Even if you can't get the most prolific ones, find people who can at least be passionate about the material, whether they're into hardcore gaming or they just admire what the game means in general.
Yeah, and plus another thing to consider is that it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be limited solely to live action either. I mean, maybe they're choosing stuff like Streets of Rage, because that is something you could do as a live action film pretty easily. Again, Streets of Fire, The Warriors. Just look at Walter Hill's entire filmography, and you've got a pretty good template to start from. I mean, let's say for the sake of argument that we were suddenly brought on to create a Streets of Rage TV show or movie. I mean, it's basically 3 cops who quit their police force in disgust from the corruption and decide to deliver justice on their own terms. I mean, that's the same origin as, say, trying to think off the top of my head. I mean, if you look at stuff like Daredevil or the Punisher TV shows that Marvel has put out, well, you could do something like that with Streets of Rage, especially if you try to kind of make it as an homage to the 80s and try to cater it to the Stranger Things crowd.
Mm-hmm. I'd say they could do Road Avenger. I don't even know if that's a Sega game particular, but that might also, then again, that might come a little too close to Fast and Furious. But with the Fast and Furious movies doing so well, might be a worthwhile competitor to try and make.
Well, yeah, and I mean, especially considering some of the other things Sega has put out. I mean, Phantasy Star, for example, if they're able to get a live-action movie of that to work, that could get them in the kind of the same arena as the Star Wars and Star Trek crowd. Now, granted that you've already got films like that coming out on the horizon, like Valerians and Passengers, but I can see why Sega would think, especially if they decide to take it from the original games and not online. But then again, that's the big problem with Phantasy Stars, the current brand confusion between online and the main series that they haven't really done anything with.
Yeah. Although I think Phantasy Star personally lends itself better to anime and animation just because of its whole aesthetic, but I could see it work in a live action. Live action might compare it a little too much to Star Wars, given its influences from Star Wars. And well, hey, Sega, I got a perfectly workable animation script sitting on my computer right now. Call me.
Yeah, I mean, between all the Sega properties, I mean, if I were to like be brought on, I would probably either do something like Streets of Rage or Altered Beast, because those are the Sega games. Well, Altered Beast more in particular is the Sega game I have a lot of nostalgia for. As for some of these other titles, I mean, Crazy Taxi, that one you could do as just like a weird madcap comedy. I mean, either getting someone like Kevin Hart or Chris Tucker to play one of the taxi drivers, and well, then again, you end up with a movie like that Jimmy Fallon movie where back when he thought he could act, where he starred opposite Queen Latifah as a taxi driver. I mean, so who knows? Maybe it would just. I mean, good on Sega for at least wanting to take the risk and expand their horizons a little bit, but definitely some weird choices. But who knows? Maybe it'll actually lead to something unique and interesting, or it could lead to history repeating itself with a lot of video game properties.
Yeah, especially after this year was such a crowded year for video game movies. I think we've probably had more video game movies this year than any other year prior.
But yeah, and we still have one on the horizon that we'll need to take a look at, and that is Assassin's Creed. We had Warcraft, which had its problems and didn't really make any waves in the film industry to kind of make that as a secure investment. But then you have something like Assassin's Creed that maybe this will be the film that gets it right. But again, you never know.
We'll have to see.
Yeah, we'll have to see. So who knows if anything will even come of it? So far, all we know is that Sega is partnering with Circle of Confusion, and they're basically wanting to enter film and television. So we'll have to keep track of everything as things develop. Maybe it's the fact that Uwe Boll retired that they basically thought, hey, the coast is clear. We can try something new with House of the Dead without having to get into a boxing match with Uwe Boll for the umpteenth time. I wish that was a joke, but he actually challenges people to boxing matches.
It's true, he did. So, yeah, now that Uwe Boll's gone, it's a whole new era for video game movies, hopefully.
Yeah, maybe that'll be the premise of Streets of Rage, is that they have to bring in Adam, Axel, and Blaze to help a representation of Sega. Maybe it's just Sonic cowering in a corner, and they have to fight Uwe Boll to rescue Sonic so they can make more movies.
I'll pay to see it.
Yeah, I would too. And speaking of video game movies, we also have news regarding another video game movie, this time from Sega's former rival, now compatriot, Nintendo, and that is that the upcoming Detective Pikachu movie has secured a director. Now, looking at the story, the director that they've chosen is Rob Letterman, who is best known for, at least most recently, for Goosebumps and Monsters vs. Aliens. At least those are the films that are most notable on his IMDb page. I don't know if anybody ever saw the Gulliver's Travels with Jack Black, because I know it never came to theaters out here in Utah, at least to my knowledge.
Oh, really? Because I remember seeing ads for it.
Yeah, I remember I saw ads for it, but then it just suddenly disappeared. It was the strangest thing. It was like one of those moments where I just kept wondering, did that film even actually exist? Now, while I can't speak to Gulliver's Travels or Monsters vs. Aliens, based on what he was able to do with Goosebumps, I can see why they went with him. He definitely seems like an okay choice for directing something that would be a family movie with a slight edge.
Yeah, I didn't see the Goosebumps movie, and I haven't really watched Monsters vs. Aliens. I've seen maybe a little bit of it on TV. I don't have any strong opinions for him or against him, really. I see he's slated to do Captain Underpants. I know you're looking forward to that one. And, he did Shark Tale. That was pretty entertaining.
Well, to a point. I'd point people to the Mysterious Mr. Enter's review of Shark Tale, where he pretty much hits the nail on the head in regards to that film's problems. But then again, I don't want to write him off, given how much I enjoyed how much I enjoyed the Goosebumps movie. So I'm not as wary, because at first I thought, oh, director of Shark Tale, but he did Goosebumps, so it's very much even money.
Yeah, we'll see where he can take the movie. Of Because, I mean, Detective Pikachu has a pretty open enough concept to it that it'll just be really interesting to see how it translates into film.
But yeah, and I think it'll definitely have an easier translation to film than trying to do a straightforward Pokemon story.
Yeah.
Because that was something we all discussed when the Pokemon movie deal was made with Legendary, was what would work as a live-action movie, like what would actually show us an aspect of the Pokemon world that we haven't seen in the show or the games. And, well, a Pikachu that solves crimes, well, gives us a little bit of insight into that. It just depends on how they decide to handle it. If they're going to keep the kind of grim, dark origin of the character, or if they're going to clean it up. Plus, it also raises the question of how much control is Nintendo going to allow Rob Letterman to have? Is it going to be one of those films where Nintendo is going to be there every step of the way, making sure they're not doing something to damage the brand, or is he going to be allowed to roam a little bit?
Right. Yeah. Looks like based on the developers of yeah, he's gonna have to definitely answer to Pokemon Company, to creatures, to Nintendo. Given Nintendo's history with the Mario movie and how much that got out of control and kind of bit them in the butt for that, I wouldn't be surprised if they're going to assert a little more control over it.
Yeah, and who knows? I mean, given how effective it's been with the Pokemon anime and some of the other stuff aside from the main Pokemon anime series, I mean, if you look at a lot of the manga, that a lot of the comics that have come out of the franchise and how dark they allow it to get, maybe they'll think, okay, let's see if we can actually try this again and do it right this time. And at the very least, with Pokemon, there's more of a story than there is with Mario.
Yes, there really is. So I'll be interested. I'm going to be anxiously awaiting for this Detective Pikachu movie. I think it might be fun.
Yeah, I still want the damn game because
I do too.
Yeah, because I mean, as someone who isn't really a Pokemon fan but likes those mystery type games, like stuff like Professor Layton, that's definitely a market that Nintendo definitely, it's a good market for them to hit because they're like, hey, we see that the Professor Layton games are really popular on our system. Let's try to tie that into Pokemon a little bit. That way, you can get that multi-generational but multifaceted appeal that they were able to strike in the 90s with the card game, the video game, and the TV show. Well, and speaking of things that are animated, and we're really burning through these. Well, at least this one, I think we can get more of a mileage on it because we've discussed on the show previously about the moment that made Miyazaki want to come out of retirement. And now the video has been made available to the American public with subtitles courtesy of Anime News Network. And, well, it's, for lack of a better term, brutal. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's no other way to say it because, I mean, you see these animators that are really excited about the software that they made, only to have Miyazaki basically tell them, yeah, you guys, you don't understand what you're doing. This is, like, the worst thing I've ever seen. And even if it's in the same polite way, you just see the looks on their faces. They're just like, oh.
They are crushed.
Yeah. And although I do have to say, Miyazaki's statement at the end of the video is very poignant because when the other producer asks, well, what is your goal? And they're just like, we want to make a machine that draws pictures as well as humans. Miyazaki's voiceover pretty much says, like, oh, we're near the end times. Humans are losing confidence in their own abilities.
Mm-hmm.
And I can kind of see where Miyazaki was coming from, though, because the footage itself, to kind of describe to people, what they were demonstrating was a computer animation program that basically had an AI that could actually learn about the various things that were animating and could basically create programmed subroutines to have, well, creatures move in a certain way. And what they chose to demonstrate it was with a zombie, and it showed the zombie using different parts to crawl along the ground. And one of them was using a head and a leg to move and nudge all about the ground. And that was kind of what set Miyazaki off.
The man's never been shy about voicing his opinion.
Yeah. And it's kind of funny because he makes it clear, because it's been made clear in statements that he's never really been one for technology. He confessed he didn't even own a computer in 2008. He doesn't think that hand-drawn animation is better than CG. He's very much a man of a traditional art form who wants to make sure that it's going to outlive him. And given recent developments in the anime industry, I can't say that I blame him.
Yeah. I can see where he's coming from too. We all kind of like to make fun that Miyazaki's a bit of a grouch who will always speak up when no one really asks his opinion, but he's got a point. It's an AI program, but obviously at this point, right, it's probably still too early to say the AI can outright replace the human interaction, just as well CGI didn't. The advent of computers didn't replace traditional visual effects makers. It just gave them new tools to work with.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, especially when you look at the kind of stuff you get with, I mean, for example, like really good CG animation. I mean, if you look at stuff like Appleseed or most recently Kingsglaive or even the upcoming Star Troopers Invasion, like the Starship Troopers Invasions and the kind of things that 3D CG animation can do when you're using it right, it very much is a case of, it's just giving animators other tools to work with. But at the same time, as someone, if you look at it from Miyazaki's perspective, you're seeing people trying to basically cut more and more corners in the industry to keep up with the demand to the detriment of the art itself.
Yeah, and certainly that's an issue because for Miyazaki being as passionate about animation and filmmaking as he is, well, he's also quite the social activist himself. He's always tried to ensure that Studio Ghibli was very good to his employees, where a lot of studios particularly at the time when he started working at Toei, were always pretty bad with their employees. Today, we still hear a lot of problems within the industry, and the idea of just more ways to cut away the human element and cut away animators can be certainly terrifying to him.
Yeah, I mean, especially when you look at, if you want to see a result of people trying to cut corners, look no further than the Berserk anime, where a lot of it is CG and not even really good CG. And keep in mind, a lot of people may say, but it's a different country, and yeah, I get anime, and the people who go into the anime industry in Japan are learning different animation principles than what we are taught here in the US, because here we're taught the basic squash and stretch style of animation that was used by people like Disney, whereas in Japan, they have a completely different rule book in regards to how they see motion and how they see movement, which is why many attempts to emulate anime just haven't really worked. And so we're definitely at a bit of an impasse here with the anime industry and animation as a whole, as people are trying to mitigate the costs of producing these films, but still putting out something moderately unique. Go ahead, Alex. I cut you off.
No, I'm just nodding to agree with you. You're pretty much right, though. Certainly, there is the growing shift of animation in Japan. Even Ghibli dipped their hands into the CGI well, like a couple of years ago with Ronia the Robber's Daughter, which I thought was a pretty good attempt. It wasn't fully animated by them. The majority of the animation was handled by Polygon Pictures, but you could still feel the Ghibli touch with it as well, thanks to Goro Miyazaki, thanks to the employment of some of Ghibli's talented artists in it. It was a nice blend of both. And, I think that's what we can all hope for, is that, well, here in the US, CGI just kind of kicked the door in and took over. Well, let's hope if Japan inevitably moves to CGI, that they'll still find a way for their 2D and 3D to coexist more harmoniously than it really has here in the US.
Well, yeah, oddly enough, the one anime series that has found a way to blend 3D CG and 2D really well has been the recent, well, not counting Sun and Moon, but has been like the previous seasons of the Pokemon anime, where they basically decide, okay, well, let's use the 3D CG to create these backgrounds, so that way we can have more fun with the cinematography and battles, but then just have the Pokemon and the people be animated. And I've seen some shots from the anime where they have the blended, and it's actually pretty effective.
Oh yeah, maybe you're drawing from the same article, but Anime News Network as sort of a interest piece that talks about OLM and OLM Digital's progression of making different animation styles throughout their time with Pokemon. So
yeah, that's exactly article, right. Actually,
like I thought so, because
even looking at like the GIF, I don't know if I can get it shown on screen because my internet is not that good at the moment. But it shows that Yeah, it shows that it can be possible to blend the two and have it work. And that's at least shows that at least someone's trying to find a way to make it work, and that's at least promising. And knowing Miyazaki, I doubt he's the kind of person who will be necessarily open to that. But then again, with the upcoming short Kebushi no Boro, maybe that's something he's experimenting with.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what he goes with his next set of shorts. Okay, I can't get the GIF to play on my end either.
Yeah, that's the problem with trying to do these Google Hangouts, is that it eats up bandwidth like Kirby at an all-you-can-eat buffet. Yep. And speaking of the perils of the anime industry, that brings us to another company that is also going through some tough times, for lack of a better term.
Yes.
And that is the studio by the name of Gainax. As we reported last week, at least I think it was last week, Studio Kara has filed a lawsuit against Gainax over a 100 million yen loan that allegedly Kara lent to Gainax to keep Gainax open. And so the lawsuit was basically to try to get that money back. And there's been a recent development, not a major development, but somewhat of a development, and that is coming from the president of Gainax, current president, Hiroyuki Yamaga, posting an apology to Gainax's website regarding the news regarding the lawsuit. And it is kind of the typical apology, apologizing to all parties involved and stating that they're undergoing restructuring and they're trying to once again put project production at the center of their business. No official comment on the actual lawsuit itself, but it looks like that the lawsuit has caused people to kind of panic a little bit.
Oh yeah, I can imagine. For one, we're still awaiting the last Evangelion movie from Kara, and Gainax has been kind of dormant for a little while, but they've been trying to get their long-awaited next to Uru in Blue or something, Aoki Uru project movie going, which I guess they had it gold aimed for 2018, slated for a 2018 release. That's been a movie that they've been trying to launch for decades now. And, Gainax is just, the poor studio has been struggling to find its foot ever since, a lot of its creators have moved on to other studios.
Yeah, a lot of them having moved to Kara as a weird, nice twist of the knife.
Yeah, that's really pretty sad, too. Kara and Trigger, have kind of stolen a lot of Gainax's old thunder now, and this is, unfortunately, just keeps, getting more and more hectic for them.
Yeah, and I mean, it's a shame, and so far, there's not much else to say aside from the guy saying, hey, we're currently restructuring, trying to get our house in order. We apologize for the concern. We're just basically trying to get this sorted out. Although one thing that Yamaga did note is that the main company, Gainax, currently has no capital ties to the other companies, Yonago Gainax, Fukushima Gainax, Gainax West, and other companies that are in Kyoto and Niigata. And so this kind of raises a good question of what will the lawsuit actually accomplish if they don't have any ties to the other arms of Gainax? Where does that leave Gainax?
That means, I guess that would just mean the main Gainax studio will have to, of course, front all costs for the lawsuit.
Yep, and it could very well mean that the company itself might go under if they're not able to, because granted, 100 million yen is not a lot of money in the US. That's the equivalent of about $878,777 in regards to that. That's how much money we're talking here, which, while to some companies may seem kind of small, but it's still a sizable amount, especially given how closely Kara had been working with Gainax on various projects.
Yeah, I mean, if this doesn't outright bankrupt them, it'll cripple them pretty badly.
Indeed. And that does raise other questions in regards to both things that Gainax is working on, but also something that Kara itself is working on, which leads directly to the next story, which was one that we had in the wings for a couple weeks, but is something worth looking at, especially when you consider the situation with the perpetually worked on, yet to be released Evangelion Rebuild movie, but as well as the fate of both Gainax and Studio Khara going forward. And that is the discussion of the future of the franchise that is Neon Genesis Evangelion. Now, the reason this has come up is because they recently celebrated a 10-year anniversary, or I think 10, maybe longer. Oh yeah,
10 years.
Yeah, 10 years of the rebuild of Evangelion. That shows you how long these films have taken people. That they're able to...
10 years of the rebuild franchise and 10 years of Studio Khara.
Yep. And so
it's a double anniversary right there.
Yep, a double anniversary. And in celebration of this anniversary, as well as having a large exhibit with an art gallery, Anno sat down for an interview that was published in a booklet in which he kind of described what he hopes will happen with Evangelion going forward when he's no longer really working on it. And basically, it kind of even goes to the details of why he founded Khara, saying that he had run out of things to do at Gainax and basically wanted to start over. And, well, it's looking at this, it's very much what he's hoping to accomplish with, or at least what he's hoping Eva will become when he's pretty much passed the torch, is that it'll basically become a franchise like Gundam, where you'll have different people working on it at different points and doing their own interpretation. Whether that will actually happen in a way that will honor that legacy, well, remains to be seen, considering that the Gundam franchise has put out a few duds here and there.
Yeah. It would be interesting to see where essentially we could go with an Evangelion anthology project, series, movie, whatever it might come out of, just many interpretations and many spin-offs of the Evangelion universe to come.
Yeah, I mean, especially with what we've already seen with manga, like the Shinji Ikari Raising Project, Campus Apocalypse, and a lot of these other spin-offs that have come out of it, it definitely make... I mean, on the one hand, it means, okay, more exposure for the brand, but on the other, it may also cause a little bit of brand confusion, because that's something that can plague large-scale franchises. I mean, if you look at what happened to poor Double Dragon back in the day, with so many different things being pulled every which way, it's hard to say if Evangelion will actually have that same lasting appeal under a new hand that it was able to accomplish during the time of the run of the original anime and the rebuild movies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that will definitely be the challenge there, because so much of Evangelion became an existential piece of Anno's own personality and the issues he was working with during the late 90s when he was trying to put the series together and was going through so much hell trying to get it done. It was kind of a lucky accident because another project of Gainax got canceled and the production companies wanted something else to fill up their time with, and Gainax said, hey, we got this guy who wants to do something.
Yeah, I mean, especially when you look at the shape of the anime industry at the moment as well, where, yeah, it's good when someone takes the time to make sure they're putting out quality product, but at the same time, with how high the demand of anime has gotten at this point, that is kind of a problem where doing something where you're taking your time making something look good may not be financially feasible. I mean, especially when you consider how much people are trying to churn out stuff like Sailor Moon Crystal or stuff like the various Gundam spinoffs and trying to get them out so quickly that they're having to cut corners wherever they can.
Yeah, that would, and certainly Evangelion suffered that when its budget got slashed and they ran out of money and were pretty much reduced to crayon drawings at the end of episodes.
Yeah, and so whether or not Eva will actually flourish under a new hand is really hard to say, because it's very much a case where it's so closely tied to Otto and his own unique vision of how things work with anime that it's very hard to see if anyone else could really do something that would do that sort of thing justice without completely having to do something completely different. But then again, maybe that's Otto's point, is to have it where someone will take that pieces that make up Eva and does something completely different rather than trying to recreate what the original series was able to accomplish.
Yeah, I mean, he says he wants it to be spun out every which way and reconstructed, so he might exactly want that, just to see everybody's radically different interpretation of the series going forward.
Yeah, although that definitely raises its concerns when you hear, because I mean, especially when you've heard rumors of the perpetually in development hell live-action adaptation that studios have been trying to get off the ground for years. And, well, it just leads to the question of, well, how much will be allowed to be changed for the sake of these new interpretations? Now, I haven't really read Campus Apocalypse or the Shinji Ikari Raising Project, but I know that at least from what people have explained about it, it at least still feels like it's part of Evangelion because of the focus on characters like Shinji, Rei, and Asuka.
Yeah. Though Adam has before mentioned how much he particularly loves the unit robots, so maybe therein lies some kind of special appeal outside the circle of main characters, Shinji, Asuka, and Rei, and people would still potentially show up for the Eva units. You may not have the same pilots, but hypothetically, you could have a group of new young children who have to pilot these giant robots for whatever reason. New angels attack. It's a different planet. Yeah. They could take the fight to the angels, whatever it may happen, what it may be.
I mean, another way they could even do it is maybe do an exploration of maybe what happened during the first impact or the second impact, moments that we never really got to see, and maybe see how humanity had to fight off the angels the first couple of times before they were able to create the Eva units. That would be something I would want to see, and I think that you could actually get some mileage out of, is showing, okay, what about when humanity doesn't have these giant robots to fight off these angels? What do they have to throw together to respond to this threat? I mean, the closest we got to something like that was Shin Gojira, where you see people having to scramble to react to the threat that is Godzilla, so it maybe even be something similar to that.
Yeah, really go into the origins of Nerve, into Sele. There's definitely a lot of angles of the Eva universe that can be explored, be it from the original story or from all new points of view, all new stories.
Yep. And so whether or not we'll actually see any more of Eva in the future is yet to be seen, mainly because we still haven't even seen the fourth Rebuild movie yet, so we don't even know where anything is headed. Although, given that the title in Japan ends with a musical notation that denotes repetition, maybe it'll be one of those things that just resets everything back to square one, or for all we know, Shinji is stuck in a time loop.
That's been my theory for a while now. I think I even pitched that theory to Anime Bonsai when we did the Eva panel, that Shinji is essentially in a Groundhog Day loop. Yeah. And that's why some people have even speculated, the official English title will become You Can Not, in parentheses, Repeat, because it's the musical symbol of repeat.
Yep.
So I like that idea.
Or alternately, if he is stuck in a time loop, it could even be like You Cannot Escape, because it would then imply Shinji is stuck in some sort of hell where he's forced to relive the events of the Eva series ad nauseum for all eternity. Maybe that's the whole twist, that Shinji is actually in hell, and his torture in hell is that he has to relive all of those moments over and over and over again.
Jeez, the poor kid, he'll never get a break.
Nope. Already has daddy issues up the wazoo, and just, yeah, it sucks to be Shinji.
Yeah. Dude, you shouldn't have fapped over a comatose girl.
Yeah, maybe that's what got him sentenced. Maybe that is the whole reason for the Rebuild movies, that that he got sentenced for that, and now is meant to basically relive all those events.
Oh, jeez, this is some dark shit right here.
Eva is a weird series, people. That's the moral of the story. Evangelion is really, really weird.
Yes, it is, because Evangelion is weird.
Yeah. Speaking of weird, given that we burned through a lot of these stories, well, luckily we have quite a few on backup, and this one is definitely more in the realm of speculation, because speaking of series that are weird, well, there is a certain series produced here in America that has that same quote-unquote anime appeal by the name of RWBY from the people at Rooster Teeth. Now, the reason that they're kind of showing up in the news here is because a long-rumored speculation about what might be transpiring in regards to the RWBY franchise just got somewhat confirmed. And that is that the people behind RWBY paid a visit to a company known as Arc System Works. For those of you who don't know, Arc System Works is a video game company best known for video games such as Guilty Gear, Blaze Blue. They've also worked on the Persona 4 Arena, as well as many, many other fast-paced fighting games that as many people have described, are basically fighting games on crack. Now, why are people getting excited about this? Well, it all starts from an interview that one of the key people at Arc System Works had way back in the day, in which he stated that he wanted to make something based on Ruby. So, naturally, Reddit is losing its mind. Yeah, I had to take a breath for a second, because although I'm not a big fan of Ruby, I am a follower of Arc System Works. I'm a big fan of Guilty Gear, and here's the exact quote that the creator of Guilty Gear, Daisuke Ishiwatari, said that kind of started this whole thing. And it literally is him saying, if I were to make a game based on something that wasn't completely original, which is what I've done in the past, it would be based on the intellectual property of Ruby. Each girl has their own kind of color, theme, and theme they are associated with, and the original creator has sadly passed away. If I were to ever make a fighting game of this, I would really want to spirit that if possible. So, upon seeing a quote like that, and then hearing that the people from Rooster Teeth are actually talking with Arc System Works, naturally that means everyone's wondering if a video game is actually going to come out of this. Now, no one knows for certain, although there has been some teasing on the Rooster Teeth side of things of whether or not something is in production, but there's not much to say right now. But that was something that was making the rounds on the internet for a while, is whether or not we'll get a Ruby fighting game from the people behind Guilty Gear.
Yeah, well, we'll see, I guess. A lot of wait and sees tonight, isn't it?
Yeah, that's pretty much how it is. But at the very least, this one is a clear wait and see, but probably something's going to happen, since it's clear that the people at Arc System Works like Ruby, and if you look at the stuff that they do in Ruby, Montium must have clearly played some Guilty Gear when designing half of those weapons, because if Guilty Gear must have been some sort of influence, just given how the fights are played out in the earlier seasons. It's definitely something to be excited about.
Yeah, I haven't really watched any Ruby. I've had it recommended to me. Maybe I'll have to finally sit and watch a couple episodes of it.
Yeah,
but,
yeah.
I hope so. I hope so for the fans, that you'll get something fun and exciting out of this. It sounds like something's brewing around here.
Yep, and I mean, as someone who's a fan of the games, it definitely is like, okay, it'll be cool to see because Arc System Works has done fighting games based on other properties before. I mean, most recently they worked on Extreme Butoden for the 3DS. That was with Dragon Ball Z. They've done stuff for Fist of the North Star and a lot of these other franchises. So if anybody could make a really good fighting game with characters from Ruby, it would be them. And yeah, we are burning through these a lot more quickly than anticipated, but that's why we have backup stories, people. And, all right, and so this next one is one that literally brought as we were getting things ready tonight, and that is that we have another animation announcement. This one coming from Amazon, and that they're trying to produce their own their first fully animated feature film, and that is the project titled Emily the Strange. Now, I've heard of the character before, so I'm not as familiar. But it appears that Amazon is moving forward with a film based on Emily the Strange. Who, looking at I'm literally having to do this live, people. Like looking at it was honest. Let's see, peaked in popularity. Yeah, definitely flying blind here. But looking at the premise of it. The character of Emily the Strange is a nonconformist teenage girl who loves cats, and she was created by skateboarder Rob Rieger, I think is how it's pronounced. And apparently she had appeared on a lot of merchandise in the late 90s and early 2000s, and now she's, as well as a series of books and comics. And now they're actually making an animated movie, since the rights that were initially given to Universal to make a movie that was stuck in development hell have since reverted back to Dark Horse, which published the comics and the books. And, well, now Amazon, in their one of their many efforts to remind people that they do content on their video app that no one uses, is that they're now stepping into the arena with producing their own animation. Now, looking at this, it was first reported on the Hollywood Reporters that it's looking at the imagery at the very least, it looks like they're trying to at least honor what the imagery was, like what the appeal of Emily the Strange was. unfortunately, I'm not really seeing a lot of details about what the film is actually going to be about.
Yeah, it's just such an open concept. It seems mostly it's just a character. It's not like there's a concept. But if the rights are owned by Dark Horse and there are comics or other material surrounding her, I guess they can always go to that.
Yeah, so for all we know, let's see. I'm actually trying to find any information, but it looks like that apparently that a lot of people are making a lot of comparisons to other shows, but who knows? We'll just have to keep an eye on this thing and kind of keep tabs on it as things develop.
Yep.
All right, let's see what else we can also cannibalize to fill in the remaining time, because we're burning through things faster than, I mean,
This
we're going
happens, this happens when it's a two-man show. You just
Indeed.
run through everything too quickly.
All right, well, to continue on the animation news, let's go with something that hopefully will get more people excited, and that's the announcement that, well, first of all, we already talked about in previous episodes how there is an upcoming English dub for Dragon Ball Super, and it's just been barely announced that they're going to be airing at those English dub episodes on Adult Swim's Toonami block this coming January, the official premiere date being January 7th. Whether they're going to start at the very beginning with the retelling of Battle of Gods, or if they're going to skip to the Future Trunks arc like they did on Crunchyroll, that remains to be seen. Looking at this, it looks like it is going to be Season 1, but given how many episodes that we've got, I don't know what Season 1 could mean in this context.
It's true. That's true. Let me actually look at Dragon Ball Super's episode counter.
Yeah, because looking at this, I mean, of course, it's Funimation. Why wouldn't they want to dub Super, given that they also are doing a dub of the second Dragon Ball Kai series, which basically is an abridged version of the Buu saga, that's also going to be airing on January 7th, kind of as a lead-in to Dragon Ball Super, or at least from the looks of it. Yeah, it looks like it's actually going to be airing after Super, so, well, that'll be... Have fun sorting out the continuity behind that, children.
Okay, so according to Wikipedia, the Dragon Ball Super Season 1 is Battle of the Gods arc.
Okay, so whether or not that will actually go well with the people who still stay up late to watch Adult Swim or TiVo it, like most other people, that will remain to be seen, because that was something I know a lot of people were divided about, was why they were retelling stuff like Battle of the Gods as the opening season instead of telling the new stories that people were expecting. Now, granted, they have been doing new stories since then, but that was even something that kind of dissuaded me from watching the series at first, was that it was retelling Battle of Gods. So, as for my thoughts on it, well, good on Funimation and good on Toonami that you're basically getting another anime that's kind of been a staple of Toonami since its inception, because granted, a lot of the stuff they saw on Toonami included stuff like Dragon Ball Z, among many other shows, so it's kind of no surprise that they would air it on Adult Swim to try to cater that fan base. Maybe the reception will go better than when they tried to air JoJo.
Well, Dragon Ball's got, I think, a bit more universal appeal than JoJo, but well, it'll be another home run, I guess, for Toonami.
Yeah, and that's implying that because I don't even know the exact numbers, because even though they brought Toonami back, it still hasn't quite done as well, mainly because it's so late in the night that most people are usually asleep and thus use TiVo to watch it. So what will come of it, who knows, but hey, another quote-unquote quality anime being brought to the Adult Swim's Toonami block. And let's see what else we've got. Doing it live, people. Doing it live, because...
Well, apparently Sea of Thieves Alpha launched.
Yes, the pirate MMO being put out by Rare, except it's kind of the shell of Rare that Rare once was, because, well, most of the people who were behind Rare have since left the company.
Yes.
Now, with the alpha for this, there's not much to say because, well, it is an alpha of an MMO. And, I mean, usually when people do public betas, the game's in a more complete state, but with an alpha, that's just them trying to put the initial puzzle pieces together.
Or if you're Star Wars Battlefront, then that's your final product, Ubisoft.
Yeah. Well, that's technically EA, so.
EA, Ubisoft. Oh,
Like,
EA is the publisher, I think, yeah.
yeah. But it applies to Ubisoft. I mean, if you look at the Assassin's Creed games, and all the frequent glitches. So looking at it, it looks like they're getting to about 1,000 players who will be taking part in this limited play session to kind of hammer out the bugs and basically be the guinea pigs before rolling out the product in full. And so, as someone who doesn't really play MMOs, I don't really have too much to comment on Sea of Thieves, so...
I'm surprised. I mean, we heard about this 2-3 years ago, but we hadn't heard anything since. All of a sudden, whoa, there's an alpha.
Yep, and especially when there's still a lot we don't know about it. I mean, yeah, we've seen the concept art, we've seen what they're hoping to accomplish, but keep in mind, a lot of details aren't allowed to come out because anybody that would be involved with the alpha will be under a non-disclosure agreement. So even if there are some great big discoveries, like Rare and by extension Microsoft are definitely going to want to keep a lot of this close to the vest.
Yeah, probably so. It just makes sense.
Yep, so honestly, I don't have much to say about it. Do you?
No, it's just, I guess Rare finally, I said this way back when it was first announced, it's like, oh, Rare finally got back to Project Dream after all.
Yeah, just watch when it just turns into a Banjo-Kazooie MMO like what happened to Project Dream initially.
Oh my god. I don't think I could take a Banjo-Kazooie MMO, because I think that would just turn... I love Banjo-Kazooie, but I think that would just turn into nuts and bolts.
Yeah, either nuts and bolts, or it would just be jiggies everywhere.
Jiggies everywhere.
Yep. But then again, what would probably happen is that you would have jiggies everywhere, but then the game would crash immediately from having to render that many jiggies. Yeah. I mean, at the very least, it's nice that Microsoft is no longer chaining them to the Kinect and those various Mii knockoff games anymore, because I think they finally got the hint.
Yeah. It could go somewhere and maybe launch Rare into a new golden age. Who knows? We'll see, I guess.
Yeah, it's especially given just all the crap Rare has gone through. Well, it could go either way. And I mean, at least the character design looks promising, so... At the very least, we know the game will look good. It's just, again, with MMOs, it's kind of... I mean, that's why you do these play tests with actual players, because there's so much that can go wrong, especially when you do a bunch of changes. And I speak as a somewhat frustrated former Mabinogi player who got left behind because you missed 1 or 2 expansions, and then suddenly everyone's either a giant or an elf, and you have no idea what the hell is going on.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and that's not even counting the Sword Art Online stuff that they did.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so unfortunately, we've pretty much burned through our reserves. We've burned through all of our stories and burned through our reserves, so...
So I guess we'll call it early?
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, at least we hit the hour, but unfortunately, there's not much else we can really talk about unless, well, yeah, we burned through everything. We're like the frustrated Magic player at a tournament who's burned up all of his mana. We're dipping into the HP here. Yeah, so unfortunately, since there's not much else we can really talk about, I guess we don't really have much choice but to call it early because, well, we burned through all the stories so quickly that we did not plan for this.
Yeah. I guess that's it.
Yep.
Let's start wrapping it up.
Yep, I guess that's all we can do. So, well, if people want to get a hold of us and discuss the various things that we discussed at such a rapid pace, Alex, where can they find you?
Of course, I'm on YouTube. Shadowblazer 3000 is my channel where I do all sorts of great anime content and the occasional Let's Play to break up the monotony every so often. And of course, follow me on social media. If you want to follow me on Twitter and always get new published video announcements, that's where you'll find them. At AlexJShort is my handle. And for anime fans, follow me at myanimelist.net/Shadowblazer 3000.
All right, and I don't want to do a lead into myself, but if people want to get a hold of me of the various opinions and to comment on my hosting abilities, you can always find me here on YouTube at youtube.com/StudioGhostUtah. You can also find me on Facebook at facebook.com/Romney'sReviews, no apostrophe, and I am also on Twitter at Romney Reviews. And unfortunately, I don't have a Romney's recommendation this week because, well, the thing I've been focusing on the whole week and probably for the rest of the year has been Final Fantasy 15, and so I haven't had the chance to find any other books or comics to really recommend. So, unfortunately, no real recommendation this week. Now, if you want to get a hold of the show directly, there are multiple ways you can do that. First, there is our email. If you want to email stories or comments about the various episodes, you can email us at geekyweek@gmail.com. You can also follow us on Twitter at geekynro. And we also have a Facebook page, Geek News Reviews and Opinions, where you can find us, like it, and be kept up to date on when we go live and what kind of stories we might be covering. And even then, we ask the audience about various topics to kind of get their opinion. And we often do responses on that. And we also take a look at listener stories. And for those of you who are listening to this after the fact, you can also find us at geekyweek.podomatic.com. That way, if you want to download our episodes onto whatever device you listen to, be it iPod or phone, you can go over to Podomatic and add our podcast to your RSS feed. But for now, that brings our show to a close at least, and I'm trying to ramble a bit to hit at least an hour and a half, but that is it for our show this week. Unfortunately, we burned through our stories so quickly because there's only the two of us, so that's just the way the cookie crumbles. So for me and for Alex and for Adam, who is currently sick, we will see you next week for more geek news, reviews, and opinions.
Good night, everybody.